Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sunny Side podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Adriel Desautels. He is the founder and CEO of a company called Netragard. I'm going to let Adriel introduce himself. Adriel, how are we doing?
Doing pretty well. As good as could be. As you said, I'm the founder of Netragard. Netragard was founded all the way back in 2006 on the premise of delivering uh, bona fide pen testing services, which really means we actually emulate what threat actors do. We've got a long history, in cyber warfare, vulnerability research, exploit dev, you name it. But I've always been pretty much on the bleeding edge of offensive security.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to unpack it today. So, Netragard 2006. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of the journey, Adriel? What's kind of led you to the point of starting Netragard, although it was quite a few years ago now? What was the kind of gap that you saw in the market, etc.?
Yeah, what ended up happening, I sold my first company, Snowsoft, which was predominantly vulnerability research and exploit dev and other,
Hmm.
security services. And shortly after I sold that, we had a person that we knew reach out to us from a customer and said, "Hey, we're looking for a pen test." And I said, "Well, we don't do pen tests, but because there was no we at the time, right? We don't do pen tests, but let me reach out to some firms that claim that they do pen tests and we'll contract one." So we found a large, well, now it's large, back then they were starting up, but firm in Boston, Massachusetts that actually put in paper that they would deliver a manual penetration test. They agreed to the terms that we established, and um, before the test began, we set up a flight recorder with our customer so we could watch to make sure it was a real pen test. Not only was it not a real pen test, but they actually outsourced the work to a young kid. He was a 19-year-old kid in the UK that had his own little company, just him. And he ran 3 vulnerability scans using this company's technology and then produced a report that was almost entirely false positives.
Really?
And I that really frustrated me and frustrated the customer. And so the customer, or Ken, I guess, so he said to us, "Hey, we want you guys to do the test." And so we ended up delivering the engagement. We compromised their domain in under 4 minutes, just about. He was blown away. He asked us how we did it, and the way we did it was kind of cool. So there was a tipping point device, and there was another device that was sitting behind a web application that they had, and there was a SQL injection, blind SQL injection vulnerability that existed behind these two devices. We were able to take a payload, reverse the payload to get past the two different detection mechanisms or prevention mechanisms, whatever you want to call them, and then wrap it in the reverse function, which is a part of what was available through Microsoft SQL. So we sent the payload that was written backwards in, we had successful execution, and we ended up with admin privileges because the service itself was running as DA. Um, and the reason, nobody else had found that, because they'd had tests before, the reason nobody else had found that is because they're using commercial off-the-shelf tools. They were doing what this guy from the UK did, basically running scans. And the commercial off-the-shelf defensive tools are fully well aware of the commercial off-the-shelf offensive tools. So they
Hmm.
kind of cancel each other out. We didn't use those tools. And so they started talking about us to other people. People started coming to us because they wanted to get tested like we were the bad guys. And Netragard has done that ever since. So we really do specialize in uh, realistic threat penetration testing or threat-led penetration testing. Um, I think I almost guarantee you, even if you think you're safe, we'll get in.
That's good. That's a scary guarantee. Well, I appreciate the overview. Okay, so let's keep it really really simple. So if I'm a business, oh, first of all, what's your demographic? What's like the avatar that you guys are working with?
Yeah, so we get asked that a lot, and the real answer is anybody that cares about their security, that's serious about it. People who are looking for just a quick check in the box, compliant stuff, we can deliver that too, but that's not what we focus on. This doesn't really provide much protective value. But in terms of who we service, I mean, we've done work with everybody, from some of the Vegas casinos to large auto manufacturers, wealth management companies, and I think the smallest business we ever worked with was a bar out of Manhattan, little tiny
Really?
bar out of Manhattan. Yeah, it was fun.
Fair enough.
So yeah, we'll
Okay,
span the gamut.
So you don't actually have like a particular vertical, more horizontal, which is okay. So say I'm a client, I don't know, say I'm one of them casinos that you work with. Like what is the difference? Like what is a pen test, for example? And what's the difference between offensive and defensive cybersecurity? Like if I'm an alien, what actually is it?
Yeah, so the original intent of penetration testing was to determine how effective you were at protecting yourself from an adversary, like a bad hacker trying to break in and steal your data.
Hmm.
And if you think about what that means, it means that for the testing to be effective, you have to test using the same techniques, tactics, and procedures as the bad guys. If you're not doing the same things that they're doing, level of tenacity, et cetera, you're doing a subpar test, you're not really testing your defenses. Well, in 2005, around 4 or 5, when PCI became a thing, MasterCard and Visa created PCI, they created a standard that mandated penetration testing. And they created a whole new industry for compliance penetration testing. But compliance penetration testing, in all truth, has never had anything to do with real security despite its best intentions.
Okay.
Compliance penetration testing is very paper-like, right? You have a checkbox or a checklist, and you have to go through and say that you did each one of these things. They don't define how to do those things. They don't define how deep you have to go. And even when they try, they fail to define any level of reality. So when you do a compliance penetration test, you can pass with flying colors, right? Everything is great, get all the checks in the box, and you're still vulnerable. It's like testing, body armor with a squirt gun or wearing a paper seatbelt and
Okay.
expecting it to protect
Yeah.
you, right? Looks good, doesn't do anything. Greg Steinhafel from Target, he said something to the effect of, I don't get it. We were just certified as being PCI compliant. We suffered a breach anyways. Um, and so a major part of the issue between these two services, between threat-led penetration testing or genuine penetration testing and compliance penetration testing, is one will establish a false sense of security and you're going to get breached and wonder what happened. The
Hmm.
second has a really high ROI. I mean, in 2024, the cost of damages of a test was 4.8 million, right? So a $40,000 test would have like a 12,000% ROI, which is insane. I take that investment every day,
Yeah.
you know, but
Fair enough.
people don't. People don't. So that's the main difference. It's really testing yourself, getting real value, or just putting a check in the box to satisfy a third party and paying a lot more down the road.
That's interesting. Going back to the point of, but they don't. Obviously, that investment sounds really good. Why do you think that business owners don't necessarily see the value? Is it just because they haven't been breached yet, and they just need to have a bit of like have that before they realise what is going on, or?
No, I think it's because the majority of the industry focuses on compliance while they say they focus on the real thing.
Mm,
If you look at every single penetration testing vendor out there, especially the AI pen testing vendors out there, they all claim to test like a real bad guy, do everything fast or whatever. They all say they're doing the real deal. They're not. And so what ends up happening is, people buy their services and they're very lackluster. They're like, what is this? And everybody sells the same thing. So they're not really understanding how to differentiate or how to find a real vendor to deliver a real service versus the rest. And it's
mm,
very difficult. In fact, the easiest way to do it is by looking at how a vendor is pricing, right? When you're working with a vendor and you're selecting a vendor, if a vendor says, hey, how many IP addresses do you have? You say, I've got 10 IPs. And the vendor says, that sounds great. Let us get your proposal. They come back and the proposal is $5,000. Well, what they did was they took the 10, multiplied it times 500 and gave you a price tag. Now they go in, they do the test, and when they're doing the testing, they find that none of the services are actually running. There's nothing on any of those IPs. So you just spent $5,000 for nothing. That happens, right? In fact, we've seen that happen. Then the inverse is even more interesting, and this kind of leads into the rest of the problem. The inverse is if each one of those IPs, requires 40 hours worth of work, a total of 400 hours, you're working for roughly $12.50 an hour at $5,000, and you can't do that. Who
yeah.
can do that? So what you end up doing is you end up running an automated vulnerability scanner and you vet the results and you produce a report. So the de facto standard methodology that the industry is using is automation heavy. AI is no different. AI is literally an evolution of automated vulnerability scanning. It's not everything that it's being marketed to be, and I'm happy to prove it. you know,
Interesting.
um, yeah, it's really something.
What's brought you to that conclusion? And could you kind of elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so think about this. If you're talking to AI, there's several things actually. I mean, the first is you're talking to AI, how many times is it hallucinated convincingly, right? What AI is, here's an analogy. You're a chemist and you're working in a laboratory, and there's a parrot that exists in this laboratory, right? And the parrot, it continually pays attention and listens to what you're saying, and it picks up on answers based on things that it has heard before. It doesn't actually understand what anything means. It just knows that when you say this, I can say that. Maybe it gets a cookie. 3, 4 years down the road, you're doing something and testing something new, and you're like, oh, I wonder if this is safe, or what's going to happen, what kind of reaction, whatever. Parrot gives you an answer, yeah, it's safe, or it's an exothermic reaction, small, whatever. You go and you try this experiment, you die. It blows you up. The
Yeah.
parrot confidently walked you off of a cliff without knowing that it was walking you off of a cliff. That's AI. So there's that issue with AI, but then the second issue is real threat actors do not operate at all like AI operates. AI is this thing that is very mechanical, very loud. When you use it to do a penetration test, you're not actually using it to test, using it to orchestrate the tools that already exist for the most part. You can use it to find vulnerabilities, which it's really good at now with Mythos and all that. That's great, but that doesn't mean that it's going to do a good penetration test. Really simple example. If I want to break into a network and I want to steal somebody's, data or whatever and profit off of it, prerequisite is that I'm not detected, because if I'm detected, they're going to throw me out, right? If you think about what Mythos had to do to find just that one $20,000, I think it was, I forget what it was, OpenBSD vulnerability. It's $20,000 because it took 1,000 full iterations, right, to go through all the scaffolding to find that one vulnerability. That's so noisy. So if I'm the
Yeah.
threat actor and I have to try 1,000 times before I find a vulnerability, and that wasn't even a very useful vulnerability, I'm going to get detected the instant I start. I'm not going to get anywhere, right? So from a real threat actor perspective, AI can't do stealth, and AI can't. Um, it can't. So AI doesn't have real comprehension. It doesn't have the ability to do real human judgment. It doesn't have context to understand the full scope of a business. It can't do real business logic type work, despite what some vendors claim, right? So it's really good at mimicking human intelligence, but between hallucination and its lack of sort of the magic sauce that hackers have, the creativity, the intuition, the real understanding, right, the human angle, it's not going to be able to compete, right? It can't. And I'm actually developing my own platform internally right now to kind of help our team take care of the low-hanging fruit. And as I'm going through and developing this platform, I'm just realizing more and more how much AI can't do. And it's not a function of the model being better. It's that AI is literally just a massive prediction engine. It's really good at prediction. It's not a thinking engine. It's really good at mimicking thinking, right? And so the industry as a whole right now is making a mistake, and they're trusting that parrot, and that's going to become a real
Interesting.
issue. Yeah,
Because there is a lot of people that advertise like AI pen test for $100 or whatever. Like, are you like, do you convince like
it's
not a
garbage.
chance?
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
garbage. I mean, well, I don't want to say it's garbage, but they're misrepresenting it grossly in many cases. And when they say it thinks like a hacker, it doesn't think, let
Yeah.
alone like a hacker, right? Um, when you look at these tools, and the industry already knows this, people in my position, other hackers, they already know this. These tools pump out such high volumes of false findings, and they miss such critical things. Like you look at the reports, and they're not false positive free. They're chock full of it. And then you look at the quality of findings, you know, if you had a security researcher that was hunting for vulnerabilities in OpenBSD, they probably wouldn't have bothered to report the vulnerability that Mythos found initially because it doesn't really have any intrinsic value other than maybe a DOS,
Yeah.
right? And that actually makes me wonder if that vulnerability was never found because it was never of any value. And when you're a security researcher, you don't set up, you don't set up scaffolding that maps how you're going to do everything and then run through it every single permutation until you find something useful. That's what AI does. It runs through every possible permutation of something, right? If you're a security researcher, you're going to think about the code. You're going to work through it logically. You're going to try to figure out where useful vulnerabilities might exist, and you're going to get to that point a lot faster. Well, maybe not time-wise, but you're going to get there a lot faster in
Yeah.
terms of steps, right? So
Okay. Obviously not in time wise, but the hackers don't really care about time, do they? They care about actually doing it. Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
and
That's the
yeah,
argument.
and if you it is, and now you go back and you look at these pen testing vendors. They're well, so AI pen testing vendors. They're just automated scanners, really glorified automated scanners that are advanced. I'll give them that.
Mm,
Um, but if you look at those vendors and how they market their services, they market on speed. All of their benchmarks are based on speed and volume, right? And that's why you see them as number one on bug bounty programs. But look at the actual vulnerabilities that they're reporting. Like, really look at them and look at how complex they are and look at how much thought went into it, right? Look at the test cases when they're testing infrastructures and they say, oh, we managed to pivot and compromise domains. Those domains didn't have any active defenders. Those infrastructures didn't have any active defenders. They didn't have XDRs and EDRs. There was no evasion required. When you're doing a real penetration test and you're going up against an infrastructure and you have to maintain, I'm not even talking red team, just a really high quality pen test, and you have to maintain some level of stealth, you have to be aware of what the defenses are, how the defenses work, and how to get around them. And that's different for every single engagement, right? So when you look at how AI is being marketed, it's not at all close, to what a real threat actor can do. Not at all. And take a note from the threat actors. Look at how they're using AI. They're not saying, "Hey, artificial intelligence is going to create more of us. We're going to replace ourselves with this," because it doesn't work. If AI could do what they did, it'd be doing it, right? Instead, what they're doing is using AI as a workforce amplifier to take care of the low end work that they're doing, the basic stuff, right?
mm,
Like run a port scan, parse through this data, find me something interesting. That's how we should be using AI as an industry. The idea that AI is going to be a threat to the security industry, especially the offensive security industry, is only true if you're selling checkbox services. So if you're a company that is selling compliance and you're doing the bare minimum required, yes, AI is going to replace you. Absolutely. It's going to gut that part of the industry. But if you're the real deal and you're delivering real services and people care about security, AI is never going to get there, not in its current configuration. You have to really reach a point where you've kind of built that Terminator. You've got to have that singularity, that thing where
yeah.
this thing can be aware.
Mm,
you know.
interesting. So if I'm the client, I mean, what the argument is obviously for, I assume that the proper pen tests, if you want to call them that, they're significantly more expensive than
Not
an
really.
AI pen test, or not really.
So if you think about a pen test as a whole, right? If I come in and I identify, so here's one of the core differences. Um, if I come in and I tell you how an attacker is not only going to compromise you, but what unique methods they're going to use, and they're unique because of your infrastructure, what unique steps they're going to take, what unique tools they're going to run through, and all that, right? I can provide you with intelligence. It's called contextualized threat intelligence, right? That you can then turn around and use to build real threat-informed defenses and actually prevent a data breach. One prevented breach based in 2024 numbers is $4.8 million. That's the ROI, right? It's huge. Now, that might cost you, let's just say $40,000, right? You get an AI-driven penetration test. It's going to come back. It's going to give you an inventory of vulnerabilities for you to patch and things you have to fix. And people are already, pretty far behind on patching, which is a real problem because the rate at which AI is helping to find new vulnerabilities in the software, right? There's a discrepancy there. Um, but if you were to patch your infrastructure today, or if you were to use threat-informed, build threat-informed defenses, the threat-informed defenses are telling you how an attacker is going to operate within. AI services are telling you what you have to patch. Let's assume you patch 100% of stuff today, and then I call
Mhm.
you up, I socially engineer you, which we just did last week with a large financial institution, right?
Yeah.
Social engineer you, I gain access to the infrastructure. Your patching did nothing to stop me from getting in. And I literally took the entire company. It was ours at the end, as a customer, so it was
Yeah.
good. But what was going to stop us? Now, if they had had the services that we provide initially and follow the recommendations, we could have told them how to deploy defenses to detect our behavior after we gained access. The breach doesn't matter if you catch us instantly or almost instantly. If you notice the activity and you're able to kill us as soon as we get in, where are the damages? There's none. Equifax, prime example, right? Um, Equifax was breached because of an Apache Struts vulnerability. The web server was breached, then it sat idle for a while. Then somebody else came along and picked up the breach and propagated from that server to the internal infrastructure and took everything. If Equifax had deployed a simple little honeypot, which is a system that's designed to do absolutely nothing, it just sits there in network, and then the moment somebody issues a connection to it or touches it, it lights up like a Christmas tree and says, "Oh my God, somebody touched me."
Yeah.
If they deployed that, when the hackers got in and began probing the network, they would have probed the honeypot. That honeypot would have said, "Oh my God, the web server just touched me." Admins could have got in and shut that attack down. None of that would have ever happened, right? You can do that for free.
Really?
Right? Yeah, Honey PY, it's free. So threat-informed defenses, right, and contextualized threat intelligence tell you how to do that. AI penetration testing tells you how to patch stuff.
Okay, so it is a different ball game. So, how big are the companies that you're working with? Are they like what, like sub 100 endpoints or bigger?
Oh, I mean, some of them are some of the largest multinational organizations you've heard of,
Oh, okay.
and then some are like 30 endpoints.
Oh,
The
okay. So
smallest
it
one.
so it is a variety.
Yeah, the
I was
bar
gonna
was
say like
two.
short. Yeah, that's crazy. What was they up to?
Yeah,
That's what I want to know.
yeah.
Obviously, if for like a smaller business, like obviously for an enterprise, I understand it, but like what is the actual outcome of them spending 40K on a pen test? Like, what does that actually do
Yeah,
for them? Especially like because most businesses, if they're spending that much on like a pen test, surely they'd have like an MSSP, like who would kind of have it under
yeah,
control, so to speak. Like, what's
yeah.
the outcome?
Yeah, so one of the neat things about the way that we've built the company, just because of our philosophy of servicing people who care, the
Yeah.
pricing model that we have is based on workload. So if
Okay.
you're a small company, we're going to assess the workload, which is how are your systems configured? What do you have running? What's available? Let us look at this, tell you how much time it's going to actually take to test everything. And by the way, if you have 10 systems that are identical, we can sample. We can test one and apply the results across many. So our pricing is based on efficient workload measurements, right? If you're a small company, you have a small footprint, you have a small workload, you got a small contract, right?
Mm.
Now, when it comes to the findings, we provide methods for remediation that are efficient. So what that means is a lot of people will say patch this, change this, very specific to the vulnerability. We'll look for things like trends. We'll say, hey, we notice that this type of thing exists across the board, and here's one thing you could do to stop all this from being a problem, right? So one thing kills many is sort of an approach there. But also we have partners that are MSPs. So if you actually need help resolving things, we have partners that will work with small companies to help you get things fixed. And we do that. We have a private equity firm that we work with, and they're a fairly small company.
Yeah.
They work with a fairly large family,
Yeah.
and they work with one of our MSPs every year, based on what we find. And every year, they're getting more and more locked down.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
well, look, that's definitely given me a bit of an overview, and I hope that the audience have found that valuable. Coming on to actually like the business ownership side of things, obviously you've been going since 2006. How has that kind of journey been? Has it been like a steady growth, or has it been like a bit of a hockey stick? Or talk to me around that.
Yeah, it's been steady. I mean, I never liked working for other people.
Yeah.
I I was always that employee that if you're going to ask me to do something, I had to understand what it was, and if I thought it was a dumb idea, I was going to tell you because it just
Yeah.
I don't want to do something dumb. It doesn't go well in certain businesses. So I started the company up um, back in 2006, really because I saw a need for this real testing. I saw that everyday people relying on businesses to do their day-to-day life stuff. And I knew it was going to become, more and more online, like more online shopping, online billing, online everything. And I knew that when they put all their data out there, it was going to put them at risk. And it always bothered me to see people become a victim because of somebody else's problem, or just become a victim because they didn't understand, what the threats were. So Netragard really helps to address a lot of that, right? Like we help to address the issues that plague these people, like the uh, SaaS providers, for example, right? And so from the onset, kind of focused on that. That was our mindset, right? As the company grew, well, actually, I should say. So at the onset of the company, we also had our zero-day program. So we had the zero-day exploit acquisition program that we were running that ran all the way through 2015. That's what
Okay.
funded the initial part of the company, right? So the philosophy that I just described was also what started in 2006. That's what drove the penetration testing aspect. As we grew, we began taking on larger projects, different types of projects. Some things would be like source code audits. Some things we call special projects. We'd have specific customers would come to us and they'd want us to do research against something. So we, diversified more. By the time 2015 came around, the penetration testing part of the company had grown substantially enough that we could very comfortably shut down the zero-day program. That allowed us to focus exclusively on the penetration testing component, and it's still just been growth since.
Nice.
No external funding, no nothing, you know.
That's great.
So
So you're the sole
yeah.
owner. That's great. How is it easy to sell to businesses? Or I mean, how are you getting like to the? Is it does it come through like referrals and stuff? Obviously, that would be slightly easier. But if you're doing like cold stuff, like how is it to actually sell to business owners?
Yeah, so it really is a matter of letting them find you. You do that through publications, or you do that through, just your typical SEO and marketing, blogs and things like that. Like, we're fortunate. I mean, we've been in everything from Forbes, The Economist, Bloomberg. We've been on TV. We've been in the
Yeah.
Viceland Cyborg documentary. Like, we've been everywhere. So people see that and they're like, oh, we should check these guys out. And they come to us. Typically, what'll happen when a lead comes in that way is they'll go to our website and they'll click and then we'll set up a meeting. And we know pretty quickly if we're a good match or not. Our objective is not to close the deal so much as it is to see if we're a good match for the customer and if we think we can help them actually drive things forward. You have some people that come in and they're not really interested in real security. They're interested in that check in the box, and it's not always the ideal fit, right? Want
Mm.
people that are serious. And then, of course, we have partners and just relationships with people, not even formal partners, that refer business to us just because of the past work we've done for them. So those people may come to us with higher expectations because they've heard what we did for somebody else and we meet their expectations. So really keeping the business growing um, involves all three of those things. It involves staying present, being in the media, staying active. It involves, keeping your customers happy so that you get word of mouth,
Yeah.
and also those legitimate partners that refer business to you.
Nice. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. Cool. I mean, just before we wrap up, I mean, looking ahead in the future, 2, 3 years time, you got any goals or anything that you'd be worth talking about or happy to share?
Yeah. I mean, I think I could leave you guys with sort of a foreboding, and it's not something that I hear people talking about a lot. All this hype about AI and people trying to replace juniors with AI is a really dangerous game. When you eliminate junior talent, you are preventing future senior talent from becoming a thing. So there's going to become a point where the AI doesn't have senior talent to teach it anymore. And there's no junior talent because you've replaced it. There's going to be a huge knowledge gap. And I don't think, I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that. And I don't think anybody is thinking about that right now. I think they're thinking about how to save money, how to replace jobs, how to make things easier. But if you have AI doing all of your development, if you have AI doing all of your finances, all your marketing, all your sales, who's going to master it? AI is not going to stay the master. It's going to get stale eventually because it learns off of what we teach it, right? So
Interesting thought.
yeah, so
And that's not
it,
even that's in any business, isn't it?
all businesses across the board. It's not just cybersecurity. I mean, cybersecurity will suffer in and of itself because we evolve, or well, we should evolve as fast as the threat actors do. Our job is to be able to do what the threat actors do so that we can build effective defenses. Like, if you don't test at a realistic level of threat, you don't have that contextualized threat intelligence, you can throw defenses at your infrastructure all you want. They're not going to do anything, right?
Yeah.
If you actually understand, like the Maginot Line in France, right? If you actually understand how you're going to be attacked, then you can actually defend yourself. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, listen, Adriel, if the audience are looking to get in touch with you, where can they find you, sir?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, which is spelled wrong since 2006. It's www or just Netragard,
Yeah.
Netragard.com. You can tell I'm older because I said www.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they can email us info@netragard.com, netragard.com, and we're happy to talk. One of the things we enjoy doing, by the way, is knowledge sharing and just answering questions. So feel free to
Nice.
reach out. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on, Adriel. It's been a very interesting conversation. I appreciate it.